Howdy, Possum Patty and the gang's all here. This is Miss Titi down here going into my lap. This is Miss Stinky Winky Woos, Titi. Say hello, Titi. That's Titi, and this is Stinky. And we're here to tell you a story of my great uncle and why he got punched in the nose. The reason is just simply out of this world. Come on along. I've got my family tree notebook here, and I have one story in here from my mother's side of the family, and today I'm going to do a story from my father's side of the family. I have a book written by my great aunt Merle Rhine Mueller called A History of Greene County, Arkansas, and it does tell of my family in several pages in the book. There's Aunt Merle right there. And this book was given to me in 1986, signed by Great Aunt Merle. The book is dedicated to her brother, my Uncle L.V., and this is the gentleman whose story I want to tell you today. I think what I'll do is, maybe I'll just read you the story first. It's not very long. It only goes like a page and a half. And while I'm reading the story, I'm just going to show some old photographs of where this took place, Paragould, Arkansas, in 1930. And these images are off the Arkansas Archives history websites. The Great Meteorite in Greene County. On February 17, 1930, at 4 in the morning, a brilliant streak of light moving southwest roused people over the whole countryside from their beds. So unearthly and radiant was the light, it seemed the whole landscape was on fire. A roar and crackle like the sound of a giant engine filled the air, only to cease suddenly in a deafening boom. Excited citizens were filled with wonder. They had never seen or heard anything to compare with this phenomenon which had shattered the stillness of the frosty morning. All manner of theories were voiced on the cause of this curious disturbance and blinding display of light. The next morning at Paragould High School, Principal L.V. Rhine, who was also physics instructor, told his class he thought a meteor had fallen near Paragould. Later in the morning, he permitted the class of 12 boys to leave school on a scientific expedition. Following directions indicated by farmers in the area where the light had seemed to descend, the boys located a 185-pound rock embedded about 2 feet in the mud of a plowed field near Walcott, on the farm of R.E. Parkinson, 14 miles from Paragould. Excitedly, the boys sought permission from Parkinson to dig up the rock. He seemed a little concerned and let the boys dig the 80-pound fused mass from a 34-inch muddy hole and transport it back to the high school for display. Suddenly, the rock the boys had found began receiving a great deal of publicity. There were calls from scientists over the country, and people began coming into Paragould asking about the meteorite. A professor from the University of Iowa made a trip to the area to see the stone and collect data. He spoke to the science class and assured the students they had found a stony meteorite. Meanwhile, a greater prize had been discovered about 10 miles distant from the first find on the farm of Mr. and Mrs. Joe Fletcher near the Flinch community, about 6 miles from Paragould. In interview, the Fletchers related how they had been awakened by a piercing sound and their house rocking and vibrating as if from a blast of dynamite, and the atmosphere aglow with brilliant light. It shone like a giant conflagration. The Fletchers sprang from their bed to see a fiery object fragment into pieces, one dropping straight down and the other streaking across their roof. For a frantic moment, they thought this mysterious ball of fire might crash on the house. So awesome was the blazing spectacle, they thought it must surely be the day of judgment. It was several weeks before the greater portion of the meteor was located. A neighbor searching for a lost cow came upon it, buried 9 feet in the yellow clay of a hillside field. Clods of the yellow clay had been thrown 100 yards or more as the great stone plunged to earth. Mr. Fletcher, using a derrick with a team and a dozen men, worked several days to dislodge and lift the stone from its deep hole. It weighed 820 pounds, and when it was finally hoisted onto a wagon, the wagon bed smashed to the ground. Then there began an endless stream of sightseers to the farm to see the meteor. Tourists came from far and near to look at the stone and the hole from which it had been lifted, now surrounded by a fence to keep the visitors as well as the cattle from falling into it. The rock was becoming famous, and visitors began chipping away fragments as souvenirs. As the fame of the rock spread, offers to purchase it were made. Mr. Fletcher knew that he had a valuable find. Publishers of the Solophone, a local newspaper, offered to let Mr. Fletcher bring his meteor to their office in downtown Paragould, where it could be displayed and protected from defacement by a curious public. A stand was built on which to place the meteor, and for a time it was displayed in the front window on Court Street and drew many visitors to the town. The Fletchers began receiving numerous letters from universities and museums and interested scientists. Letters even arrived from foreign universities, so great was the interest in the stone. Several museums expressed a desire to purchase it if sufficient funds could be obtained. Professor C.C. Wiley of the University of Iowa was particularly interested and made a special trip to Chicago to urge the Field Museum of Natural History to add the meteor to its collection, which is considered the greatest in the world. He cautioned the Fletchers not to dispose of it until they were certain it would be in good hands, for Professor Wiley felt this meteor was unique because it was so well documented and observed. No other fragments were ever found. Professor Nimminger of McPherson College in Kansas made the highest bid and bought the stone for $3,600, took it to his university for display, and subsequently sold it to the Chicago Museum of Natural History, where it was prominently displayed, bearing the legend that it was found near Paragould, Arkansas. To complete the story of Fletcher's lucky stone, a part of the $3,600 went toward the payment of their farm. They shared generously with the neighbor who found the stone, presenting him with $1,000, being moved by the plight of the family, which had been in strained circumstances through a serious illness. A scientist offered the Paragould High School class $300 for their fragment of the meteorite. The school board agreed to permit the class to accept the money with which to buy desperately needed laboratory equipment. Milton Hicks, the science class treasurer, had already opened up a bank account in the name of the class. When the financial arrangement was revealed, the landowner, that was Parkinson, became very irate over the rock he had given away. He elicited the sympathy of his neighbors and accused the boys of theft. He nursed his anger to such an extent he attacked Principal Rhine on the street where he was walking in company of one of his students. Without provocation, the big, husky farmer swung a blow to Rhine's face, inflicting a nasty injury. A suit to recover the $300 was instituted, and the money was given over to the farmer, who was fined $2.50 on an assault and battery charge. The dream of equipping a laboratory by the science class was dashed. Eventually, this fragment was presented to the Field Museum, but has since ended up in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. A 3-pound chip, said to have been part of the stone, was loaned to the city by the museum for display during the town's centennial celebration. Scientists have shown unusual interest in the Paragould meteorite, and for a time it was recorded in the World Almanac as the largest in the world to have survived the friction of the atmosphere and its journey to Earth. However, a later meteorite, which fell in 1948 at Norton, Kansas, weighing nearly 1 ton, bested the 820-pound Paragould meteorite, which had been chipped away by souvenir hunters to 745 pounds and measured 22 inches in height and 28 inches in length. According to Mr. Rhine, now a retired attorney, the former city judge, for years after the meteorite was discovered, geologists continued to visit or write him to get first-hand information on this rare event. So there is the historical recording of the event. A meteorite fell. At the time, it was the largest ever recorded observation. People saw it fall to the ground, went and got it. There were 2 big chunks. One was in one field. That was the huge chunk. The smaller one, my uncle sent his students out to collect it. They brought it to the school. They put it on display. They sold it for $300. The farmer, whose field it was, sued to get that $300 back. He said that was his money because wherever the meteorite falls, and this is the law, if it falls on your property, it's your meteorite. So, yeah, they had to give back the $300. But before they gave back the $300, my uncle was walking down the road with one of his students, and the farmer came along and saw him and was so upset, punched my uncle right in the nose, causing injury. So the farmer got his $300 in payment for his meteorite, and my uncle received $2.50 fine for the injury to his nose. True story. And it's funny because if you look all this up on the web, you can find a lot of stories about the Paragould meteorite. Only a few of the stories mention the smaller piece. Most of the stories recount the larger piece. A few of the stories do recount the story of the smaller piece and how it was over at the Paragould High School, but they don't give the personal details, like the name, the name of the guy who was punched in the face. And that was L.V. Rhine, my great uncle. So if you stay tuned, I'll have a treat for you at the end of this video. And I bet you cannot guess what it is. I was going to put the whole map across the page, but then I decided to put some of this old-timey paper in the background. This is from a pack of paper I got, I guess, at a yard sale last year. Tattered Time. Very steampunkish. But some of it was missing, but it didn't cost very much. And I printed out a picture of Uncle L.V. And I'm going to put him on this page. And I have another picture I want to put here. I wonder if I should find something to back these. Give it a little bit of a frame, maybe. All right, so we'll come back to that. Oh, and I took my highlighter and I highlighted Paragould, Arkansas, up here in the corner in Greene County, just north of Jonesboro. If you know Arkansas at all, that's where it is. And I copied the cover of the book and put that somewhere. And I have a picture of Aunt Merle there. And I had typed out the story because I had to send it to somebody. And so I have a copy of that. So I was thinking of making a pocket out of the cover of the book and then putting this story, I mean, it's not the real cover of the book. I copied the cover of the book. I'm sure Aunt Merle won't mind at all. And I'm going to turn this into a pocket. I'm going to put a copy of the story in the pocket. I was thinking about putting Merle's picture here somewhere on the cover. And then I have some more things I'm going to put in here, but I think that's all I'll do for today, because this is a big enough project. I found some other things while I was working on doing this. I wonder if this will fit. And it was funny because the gentleman who wrote a book about my grandfather and my father, I had contacted him a few years ago and asked him about the story because the story was not in his book. And he said he didn't remember the story, or he had never heard the story before. So I had sent it to him. So I think this might have to trim it a little bit, but I think it'll work as a pocket. I might put a thumb hole on there. All right, so I'm going to trim this down and glue it on 3 sides as a pocket and put Merle's picture in there on the cover. And how are we doing here? Okay, I think I've got it. I wanted to leave a little space there and there. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, almost done here, almost done. I've got my pocket. I glued down 3 sides and I put Great Aunt Merle's About the Author on the front. And then I have the typed up copy of the story. Put that in the pocket. And before we go back to the first page, let me just share a special treat. Well, it is for me. In this box, I actually have, you guessed it, a piece of the Paragould meteorite. And there she is, the family story meteorite. It's a very small piece, and I loved to pass this around to students so that they would actually get to hold a piece of a meteorite in their hands. You don't always get the opportunity to do that. And there was a pressure fracture right there, and of course it broke. I just took a little glue and I stuck it back together. But I'm thinking I probably should have left it in 2 pieces, because that way maybe I could have passed on a piece of the meteorite to like 2 different people in the family. But there she is, and you can see little specks in there. It's got little specks of stardust. Look at that. See them? I guess as a huge meteorite is traveling through space, it collides with a whole bunch of little bits of space dust, and they get embedded in there, and it becomes part of it. Now this is a different kind of meteorite. There's two kinds of meteorites, and this one is chondrite, which is different than like the more irony kind of ones. But apparently this one, this type of meteorite, is very old. Old. This is billions of years old. Billions of years old. Yes, there she is. Fell to Earth on February 17th, 1930. The official Paragould meteorite. Now there are tons of bits of this floating around, and they've chopped it up into all little pieces because, you know, when people were first going to see the meteorite, they were taking souvenirs and they were hacking off big chunks of this, and apparently as collectors got a hold of it, they would chop it into smaller pieces and start selling off these little bits. So luckily it took me a long time to find a little bit, but I found this mineral dealer. His name is on the bottom here. Let's see. Schuler's. I was just looking to see where he was from. It doesn't say. Yeah, Kansas City, Missouri. It is from Kansas City, Missouri. And it did cost me a pretty penny. I got this in 2010. So I've had this for 13 years. And it did cost me an arm and a leg. You want to know exactly? Okay, I'll tell you exactly what it cost. It cost me $87.40. So, but for a piece of family history from out of this world, it was worth it. And I just wanted to get it and have the story and have something to pass on down through the, you know, through generations in the family along with the story. So this is my very special piece of the Paragould meteorite. And you know I love my rocks, but this one is extra, extra, extra special. So now I'll just show you the other page. And I didn't want to show you before because I put the picture. So I have Paragould highlighted on this strip of Arkansas map. I have a picture of the meteorite there and a picture of Uncle L.V. over there from the book. And the story is safely tucked away in there. So that is my fun family story today. I hope you enjoyed the story of Uncle L.V. getting punched in the nose over a piece of meteorite that fell from the heavens February 17th, 1930. Thanks for coming along today. Bye-bye.